Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside Chat, the Inside Study Abroad podcast live show where we like to basically just have all the technical difficulties, which is what's been going on behind the scenes over here again. So welcome to our second one of these. I can't keep saying which number it is because we're going to do like 12 million of these and I'm going to be like, what number is this? So welcome everyone. Say hi in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from around the US, the world. Love to see where you guys are watching from. And also just some logistical things. Make sure if you have any questions, add them to the Ask a Question section down below the video. We also have a poll in there. I don't do anything with this data. Maybe we should. But I just always like to see who's in the room and what's going on. The question was, what's your current employment status in international education? And so far we've had a few people respond to the poll. So far we've got 42 people. They're rolling in. So I'm just going to wait to do the breakdown. And we're going to say hi to Brianna from Cleveland. What's up? Brittany from Virginia. Welcome. And we have the amazing Sam Cooper from London.
Hello.
Yeah. Stephanie from Virginia too. Nice. Welcome everybody. And then if you guys don't know who I am, I'm Brooke Roberts. I'm the founder of Inside Study Abroad. And yeah, so today we're going to be talking about finding success in your international education career, which is like a massive topic, but I wanted to especially talk about it in light of what's going on right now and just have an open conversation and dialogue about if anything needs to change in order to be successful, a successful careerist in international education based on now what we know, this sort of new normal, and we don't even really know what the new normal is going to be. How do we need to change the way we think about being a professional in the space? What are the skill sets that we need? What's the knowledge base that we need? The types of experience moving forward. And so I wanted to talk all about that today. And Sam and I, we've been doing. Hi, Jordan from Kansas City. What's up? And then we've got RJ from Indiana, grad student that's job searching. Welcome. Camden is from Virginia. Lots of Virginia people. Yeah. You guys should have a little. Well, you shouldn't have a meetup. You should have the Zoom meetup for all the Virginia people. Okay, so. And so just to give you guys the agenda for today, Sam and I are going to talk a little bit for about 15-ish minutes. They're going to bring on a few panelists who are people who have recently gone through the job search in international education. Granted, it hasn't been right now during the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's very recent. And so I feel like I always like to get like the here and now perspective of what it's really like. Because I know what it was like for me when I first started, and then a few other job searches I went through. But everything changes and it evolves. And I don't want to sound like an old lady who's like, well, back in my day, this is how it was. Sam, how are you? What's been going on over there in London?
I'm good. Just living the lockdown life here in London.
Right.
I mean, this topic is very timely for me as I am entering back into the job hunt for international education. I'm going to be the old lady because I think we were chatting about this, my first foray into the field in the year 2000, when I think someone gave me a printed resource as part of Secusa L and said, look at this, and why don't you contact some of these people? And it was printed on paper.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it is amazing. But no, I'm doing good. I'm feeling fairly positive about everything in the field. I'm excited about the opportunity we all have to make things how we want them to be. That's kind of the space I'm in. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, what I want to talk about too is how, if anything, is changing in terms of positioning as a professional in this space. Because I have a very specific idea and philosophy on like how, if you want to stand out and you want to actually launch and grow a career, and you've now seen all of my GPI material, so like I'm like hardcore on like a very specific way of doing it. But I feel like maybe some of that needs to change. I'm not sure. We'll see. I don't know. Well, as this conversation moves forward. I just wanted to check in on the poll real quick, see what we got. Okay, we've got 5 people are here. They're employed. Welcome. Good for you. Recently laid off or furloughed 2 people. We've got job searching, but they've been job searching since before the COVID-19 began. We've got about 20, but oh my God, votes are coming in. We've got 1 grad student and we've got 2 people that are self-employed. So very interesting mix of people. And it's awesome to have so many people who are employed and feeling hopefully good about their position in the field right now. So welcome. All right. So I first want to sort of go back in time and have like story time. You kind of hinted at yours, but what I've gone through 1, 2, 3 job searches in international education during my career. The first one I talked about a lot, and some of you may have heard the story, but I always talk about how I went to grad school, was like one track mind. I'm going to be the director of study abroad at a Division I university. I like literally wrote that. I think that was what I was going to do. 100%. And went to grad school, was a grad assistant in study abroad, led faculty, led programs. I mean, I felt like I was doing all the things right. And then at the end of grad school, like we all do, I was applying for jobs. I applied for over 70 jobs. And if you were to ask me at that time, I was like, I'm a shoo-in. I am a freaking dream come true. Look at me. I am amazing. Yeah. And I didn't get any callbacks, not one invite to an interview. And at the time I was like, I don't know what I did wrong. I thought I did what everybody told me to do. And so I did what everyone does next, especially millennials who like to have a plan. I moved to China and worked at a university there for a year, and sort of regrouped, I guess, is what I did. And what in that time, I really tried to do a lot of analysis on what did I do wrong and how could I change the way I did it moving forward. And the next time I went through a job search, which is how I met you, actually, I did change up a lot of what I did. And I kind of was a little audacious. I did some things that I think are not, especially at that time, were not standard things to do. And it totally changed the narrative of my job search from there. What was your experience like the first time?
The first time I'm trying to think of how many job hunts, probably 3 is I'm thinking. I was lucky in that the way I got in initially was as a peer advisor after studying abroad. But I then moved to London at the time and was just job hunting. And it felt, that was, I would say, a fluke in that I was just applying for jobs. And I got lucky. I can say I legitimately got lucky with my first, I'd say, real job at Chelsea College of Art and Design, working in their international office. And at the time, you were still mailing in. Gosh, I'm sounding so old. I swear to you, I don't feel this old. I was mailing in sort of cover letters and resumes or CVs.
I remember going to buy the fancy resume paper to like print off.
Oh, that was key, right?
Oh, I know.
It all out. I had to go to the library.
Resume paper, is that an industry that just doesn't exist anymore? I don't know.
It does exist. It does.
Okay.
It's called swag now. I think they do all the printing and stuff. So I honestly was, I do feel like I was lucky, and I don't remember a lot of that first job search because I was young. But I've had points in my job hunt that are very similar to you, where it has been hard and emotionally hard, and I really struggled. And for me, I think what I've learned over time, and of course, I'm coming also from the internship space of international ed. So what I live and breathe and get really excited about is this career development side of what we do. And it's not sexy, but I do think that some of the solid things when you're job hunting helped me that help everybody. And for me, it was having a networking and having a mentor. I will never forget sitting in a parking lot in Santa Barbara, California, with Ann Haberkern, as she was talking to me about the field and people I should talk to and different field careers. And so that for me was the turning point when I realized that, and have since I've wanted to give back in the same way, that mentorship and connecting with people that are in the field and learning from them in informational interviews. That was my turning point for me. That was some of the stuff that I did that was differently. It doesn't always mean success, because I think we do have an issue in our field where it is still hard to break in. And I feel a great responsibility myself now that I'm hiring as part of that, to help look beyond maybe some of the things that other people don't.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then we got some Ann Haberkern shout out from Liz St. Clair.
Yeah, Liz St. Clair.
Hey,
Hi.
RJ says she worked abroad too, but not for the same reason. Brianna says she got lucky with her first job, also in London, and it was a long 8-month search. And wow. Oh, and then Stephanie said she went to China for the same reasons. You know, China is a welcoming place if you are lost and feel downtrodden from your job search. It can be a lovely place to go spend some time. But I want to talk next about some things that we think maybe held us back, or mistakes maybe. I mean, you said you got lucky that first time, but I know you went through job searches even later on where you already had experience and kind of switches, right? So, and I know for me, you know, after I did that very failed, demoralizing job search right after grad school, and then went to China, my whole career trajectory flipped. And I remember when I came back, I got several job offers from you, is one of them, working at USA in Boston. And I did accept it. And people always ask, like, what changed? You know, because technically I didn't get more experience. I didn't all of a sudden like have more study abroad stuff on my resume. I was teaching the students how to pass the IELTS exam, which is an English placement test to get into higher education in English speaking countries. And I was teaching that and working at a university in China, but I mean, I wasn't in study abroad. I wasn't in our traditional functional areas, if you will. And what really changes. So I feel like for me, and this is what I talk about a lot through Inside Study Abroad and Inside GPI. I feel like what I did is that I made sure that I was memorable. One of the things I feel like I understood after the fact is that even though I had this stacked resume, it looked like everybody else's resume. And so there's nothing like truly that it felt like, oh, everybody like studied abroad and everybody might have a master's degree or whatever the, you know, tick the boxes were. But like I had no real personality in my applications. And then another technical thing is like, I didn't tailor my applications to every job. I mean, there is definitely an instance, and I probably have the email to show it, but I definitely submitted an application where I didn't change the institution name. And I was like, you know, oh God, Acme University. And I was really applying to like XYZ University. And they responded being like, maybe apply to the right university. So embarrassing. And so
it happens.
Oh, I know. And so what I did after that is, one, I got much more specific about the jobs I was applying for before. Obviously 75 job applications, stupid, too many. I tailored my application. I tailored my application to the role. And also I went on a limb. And at the time, again, you guys, now this I feel like is more normal, but it was 2006, I think, when I started applying, late 2006. And I had started or sort of restarted my travel blog while I was in China. And it was thenewdorothy.com. And so I put it on there. And I remember that in every single phone interview I did, every single campus interview I did, then I remember being at Boston College and they were like walking me around and they were like, this is Brooke. And they said to me, oh, you're the new Dorothy. And I was like, oh crap, they like forwarded it to people. And my point is like, I did something to be memorable, did something that was a little more outside the box than the typical. And I'm not saying that the solution is start a travel blog, but it's just do something that makes you stand out, that's doing something different. Yeah. And then the other thing that I did in that time I was in China, because I knew I wasn't doing something that was specifically related to international ed. If I was going to make this experience valuable to me, I was going to have to figure out a way to tie it back into the career I knew I wanted. And so to reverse engineer that, I'm like, okay, I'm teaching 300 university students in China. They're all going to study abroad. And so, I mean, and by the way, this was pretty controversial when I did this at the university. You should probably get permission when you're working in China, just FYI. But I didn't. I didn't ask for permission. I just held some free workshops in the evenings for my students. And I did basically like pre-departure cultural norms prep, systems preps for higher education in the UK, what it's like in Australia, I don't know, and the US, obviously, and trying to prepare them because they're all deciding, do I want to apply to the US and I'll just study abroad, normal stuff. And I put that on my resume as a real experience, even though it was self-directed by myself. It was all me putting it out there, but I talked about it because I was advising. I was becoming a study abroad advisor, even if nobody ordained me with that title. Yeah. So it's your turn. What did you do to help set yourself apart?
I mean, I think I just want to say, I do love when you talk about don't ask for your job title isn't all that you can do, right? You don't always have to ask permission for the extra things you do. And I actually love that about our field. I feel like people do step up in different ways to volunteer to help the rest of the community. So that I think is a good piece of advice. I think for me to stand out is, I think we all have different skills that we lean into. And I like people. I like relationships. You know this. I like chatting with people. I like talking about study abroad. And so for me, the turning point was in a blog, right? Although I did do that later for a hot second. But for me, it was, I was those connections. And so, and just talking with people and trying to understand them and what their needs were, and then figuring out if I could help. That's always been sort of my approach. And I'd be really curious to know what other people in the field sort of consider their own kind of what's in their toolbox that helps them kind of stand out, because we all do stand out in different ways. And so that one was for me. And so when I had a director position, so I had started, at USA, the University Relations Department, and then I'd left to go traveling because why not? And I was traveled for 15 months by myself, and I came back and I thought, this is great. I've been in the field. Now I've really traveled, and I joked at the time I have my master's in travel, and it was practically impossible to get a job. And it took me, so Brianna, I feel you. It took me over 8 months to get a job back in the field. And the way I got that job was through somebody I knew that I had talked to for several months, and eventually a job came up, and it was absolutely a lower level than I'd been at before. And it was my way in, and I took it, and it was great. It was fantastic. And it got me back into that field, in that direction. So I think for me, that there were lessons in that sometimes you have to explore other areas or step down or lateral. But for me, it's always through the people I know, and mainly because I'm just curious about different parts of the field. So maybe my curiosity is my counterpart to your blogging, to your writing.
Yeah. No, and but I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think, one of my mantras in GPI is always talking about how, employer, and this is going to sound harsh, but just hear me out before you click away, is that employers and potential supervisors, as much as this industry is like full of very friendly and lovely people who, want to make the world a better place, at the end of the day, when they're filling a position or finding, a team to work with, they don't care about you. They care about themselves. They care about their problems, their pain points, what they're trying to achieve in their organization. And they're just trying to find people who can further that mission forward, or move them towards their goals. And so like you being like, and that was one of my big mistakes early on. It was like, it was me, instead of saying, okay, 100%. I've done these things. How could I be valuable to them and what they want to do?
How can I help you?
Yeah, exactly. And even though your application is about you, you have personally, in your experience, it's all about like, how can I help you? How am I going to make your life easier, your organization better, help you? It depends obviously on the role. It's like, I'm going to get you more students if it's a recruitment role. I'm going to help you get more academic partnerships because you have more of that academic understanding. What is the value you bring? That self-assessment, and then how are you going to actually help them achieve their end game? Because I think a lot of times people just rest on like, it's international ed and I'm passionate, which is always the number one mistake. I always tell the story about a few years ago when I was recruiting. I posted that I was hiring a part-time kind of marketing assistant for Inside Study Abroad, and the job rec, I was very specific, like, is a very marketing heavy role. I talked about the types of experience you would really need and understanding you need is very clear. And I got lots of applications, and most of the applications were people with, it was a lot of people, they had master's degree, they had all these credentials, and they rested on, I presented at NAFSA on, all these things, or I did my thesis on this. And I was like, that's all lovely. But what I needed was someone who was some marketing savvy and obviously knowledge of international ed, but sometimes those don't translate into those skills. So I feel like have to be really cognizant of what they are needing and what they're asking for, and apply for the job that they listed, not the job you want it to become. So we are going to bring on a couple panelists now. And if you guys have questions, I'm going to let Sam field.
Oh, yes, please. This is fun.
Some of these. These are easy. So will Inside Study Abroad air every Thursday at this time? That's a question from Stephanie Jones. Sam, I'll let you take that one while I get the other people on the call.
Stephanie, that is the goal. It might run on a different day of the week if we have things going on, but that is the aggressive, ambitious goal that we're setting. Yeah. So, so that we're trying this new model, trying to see if we can work it out. In past iterations of this little inside Study Abroad, little. Gosh. Okay. But in the past, I would do all these recordings of the podcast, and I'd end up with this like backlog, and then I became the bottleneck. And doing it live like this, we kind of like flip that process where it's like, just do it live. People can listen live. It's happening. And then we don't have to worry about me being like, it's too much going on. So, and hello, Andrea from New Jersey, NYC area. Welcome. All right. Well, I want to introduce our panelists today. We have Kelsey Toyota, who is the institutional relations coordinator. And I'm sorry, I don't have your bio up right in front of my face, so of course now I don't know. But I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves anyway. But I'm sorry. So we have Kelsey here, and then we have Joe Orser from the University of Florida, and they're both working in the field, and they're both GPI Global Pro Institute alumni as well. So welcome both of you welcome to the show. I feel like you guys need like walk-on music or something. Yeah. So Kelsey, we're going to start with you and just introduce yourself, who you are, what you've been doing. Just like give us your brief bio here.
Definitely. So I'm Kelsey Toyota. I'm the institutional relations coordinator for Spanish Studies Abroad, a study abroad provider based out of Amherst, Massachusetts. And I did GPI in 2016. And since then, I've had a lot of experiences, which I'll talk about later, but also went to grad school at SIT Graduate Institute.
Great. Awesome. Welcome. And Joe, tell us a little bit about your story.
Sure. My name is Joe Orser. I'm Global Engagement Coordinator for a professional development and experiential learning program in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at the University of Florida. It's extraordinary long
Say that 5 times fast.
Does it fit on a business card? Like,
no,
or do you
it
have
doesn't.
to, like...
But we have a really catchy title for this program, which we have to explain to everyone anyway. So we might as well write it out. But and I did the Global Pro Institute in 2018, I believe. And I was coming from, I was a lecturer in history at a university. And so I was looking to kind of transition from one field, teaching, to another, international education.
Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, something I find fascinating about GPI, because I know, like, when I started it, the premise was I just assumed it was going to be a bunch of like fresh out of undergrad, like, I've just studied abroad, I'm high on life. Everyone told me, I need to get a master's degree, but this is like sort of my like bridge experience. And I've always been surprised at how many people with, advanced education and lots of experience, but they come to GPI because I think, if I do say so myself, it provides that roadmap and navigation of the field, because that's like the first module. And then figuring out, then how do we take your special sauce, Joe, and then your special sauce, Kelsey, and figure out how do you fit into this world. So welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for being here. Sabrina might be able to join us later. I know she was having some technical difficulties. But yeah, so Joe, I'm going to start with you. And you were transitioning. You have a PhD, lots of experience in higher education. What was one of the more frustrating things about your job search when you were, trying to get into study abroad proper?
For me, the job search kind of progressed in two waves. The first one was without any really thought. I thought, I'm doing some of these, I was doing faculty-led programs to Thailand and to China. And I was looking for a new challenge. And so I thought, well, I'll apply to study abroad programs and that sort of thing. And I can't tell you how many. It wasn't a whole lot, but I basically just put out some letters and resumes and didn't hear back at all. And I thought, well, okay, that's fine. And I was just kind of just going along in my everyday world. And then I saw an ad for GPI. And I thought, well, I was interested in that. Let me enroll in this and see what I can learn. And really, I mean, it changed. It showed me what international education looks like. It taught me all about the field, and then it gave me the tools to really kind of, as you say, I wouldn't have phrased it this way, but identify my special sauce. What I have to bring and really play that up, but also gave me tools to talk about the ways I could help other areas of an international education endeavor. Yeah.
Were you mostly applying to university positions when you were? Yeah.
So for me, the university has been, universities for the last 15 plus years have been my world. And so I didn't even know about providers until I took GPI. I know that was something. And boy, I wish I had known that, because that would have been something else entirely if I had kind of engaged in that type of search. Yeah. But I had no idea about. I didn't know anything about international education except for that there was a thing called study abroad, which I had done. I studied college and I've worked internationally a lot, but I wasn't aware of the field of global education really until GPI. And I think that knowledge was what allowed me to really, and so when it came to this job search, this was the only job I applied for.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wow. Because I had.
This is an amazing testimonial. Who's recording this?
You're recording it.
Yeah. So I was able through this program to really begin to articulate what I could bring, what I did well, and as I said, it gave me the knowledge of other areas. And you have, as part of your program, I don't know if your viewers I don't know how many of them are in this, but you have these interviews with specialists around the industry. And I studied those, including, and this is, I'm one of those people who does not like to think in business terms, but I really did study the ones you had done with people who are in the business of study abroad, the providers. Yeah. And there was one on entrepreneurship, and in the talk, you brought up the phrase intrapreneurship as opposed to entrepreneurship, and it was working within your organization to try to be kind of entrepreneurial within the organization you're already in. And I thought, oh, that sounds good. And maybe I'll try to do that at the university I was at. And so I had started to do that, and had begun to kind of feel, okay, I can continue to be a lecturer and still be able to kind of do the stuff that I want to do in international education when I saw this job announcement, which I said, that's the job that I want. And so I was able really to just pool it all together and apply for this particular position. Everything was tailored for this position. Including, I see in the comments, someone said, be sure to read the job posting and reinforce that language in your application. And I did that very closely. And so I was, the application only gets you the interview, and I got the interview. And so then I was fortunate enough to get the position. But yeah, I think, if you can articulate what you bring to the table and make it clear to that organization that you've studied them and you know what they're about, and you can articulate specifically what you can provide, you're giving them every reason at least to interview you.
I have more questions for you, but we're gonna toss it over to Kelsey here. So FYI, Joe, model student, Kelsey, hopefully you can bring it. No, I'm kidding. Kelsey and I go way back. She and I have presented at a regional NAFSA together out in California. And she's been a really active member of GPI and sort of the whole Inside Study Abroad community for a long time. So Kelsey, talk a little bit about how you found yourself coming into international education and what was your original sort of endeavor trying to get a job. What was that like for you?
So how I decided to go into international education, I was kind of having a little bit of, I guess, quarter life crisis. I graduated from college. I went to go teach abroad in Spain. And during that time, I kind of had the realization that I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I was kind of thinking that what my study abroad advisor back in college did was interesting. So started looking up study abroad jobs, and I had zero information in the field, kind of had no idea where to start. And I found Brooke's website, which was pretty much the only information out there. I didn't find a lot of information on what the field was or kind of what it entailed or what the scope of it was. So that was kind of the first glimpse of what the field was. And then I decided to enroll in GPI when I came back, and that gave me a lot of insight into what the field was and gave me a lot more background information and educated me a lot. But I think the most frustrating part about the beginning of my job search was I didn't have any experience other than the experience that everyone else that was trying to enter the field had, which was studying abroad and teaching abroad, and how to differentiate myself in that. And I was having a really hard time getting experience at first, even free experience. I reached out to people and told them that I was willing to do things for free and things like that. And even then, people weren't looking for volunteers even. So I tried to really just get experience where I could. Ended up doing an internship with Pune through GPI. GPI opened up a lot of doors to opportunities for volunteering. I volunteered to do the presentation with Brooke and just tried to get my hands on as many experiences that I could and just do everything that I could. And even then, it was just very hard to break into the field. I ended up working outside the field and doing kind of a temp to full-time office job, which gave me a lot of experience. So just GPI really helped me keep everything in perspective, that any experience that you do is useful. And every experience that I did, whether it was volunteering for lessons from abroad, I tried to volunteer just for absolutely everything that I could, do as many informational interviews as I could. And each time I went through the job search, it was probably equally as frustrating. And I definitely had a lot of self-doubt and am I in the right field? Kind of almost felt like trying to break in, like how people talk about trying to break into, I don't know, being an actor into the entertainment industry, where I'm working another job to try to get into this field.
It's like international educator / waiter, it's like,
exactly. I was doing all these other jobs and trying to do these part-time experiences or internships, and then ended up doing a master's, but each time it got less frustrating and each time the job search got shorter. when I was finding my work study position, I used some of the techniques that I learned in GPI and also reached out to network and kind of find more about the position, and end up getting the position before anyone else even really applied. And then my practicum search ended up I only applied for 2 places for my grad school practicum. And then when I was job searching after grad school, I think I still felt that frustration because of the accumulation of all the years of trying to break into the field into a full-time position. But it ended up only taking 3 months. So it wasn't as bad as it was before, where I was spending a really long time trying to break into any kind of part-time, full-time position in the field. So there was definitely a lot of frustration, but over the years, all the experiences kind of just kept adding up and getting better.
Yeah, I know that you mentioned once before that, because sometimes I get the question all the time, is like GPI meant to replace a grad program? And I'm like, no. Well, I'm not an accredited higher education institution. Absolutely not. There's a lot of value in grad school. I have a graduate degree. I loved grad school. I learned so much from it. And GPI is it's not supposed to replace it. In my mind, it's supposed to be that bridge experience where, especially for someone who's like, I really want to be in this field. Everyone says I need to get a master's degree, but they're not really sure what like you mentioned, Kelsey, like, if you go to NAFSA or the forum website, there's lots of information there, but it's like entering a whole new culture. And you're like, what do these words mean? Like, what are we talking about? I don't understand these things. And what I try to do in GPI is break that down into quote unquote layman's terms. So you can sort of say, well, when we say this, we mean this, and things like that. And so people can walk into it with an understanding of the field, understanding of the grad school option, the track, right? And then making a decision about grad school with a lot of information. Because I think a lot of people are just like, get any old master's degree. And I'm like, if you're going to drop that much money, you better like really love that subject matter. You better, really want that experience, because it's a big investment of your time, your energy, and obviously your money. And I don't want anybody just being like, well, I'm just going here because I said, oh my gosh. Siri. Hi. So I know that Kelsey, you had mentioned that it helped, GPI was like helpful, and like the feedback you got about grad school was really helpful in like sort of deciding, okay, which program might be the right fit for me and things like that. So for me, I'm like, it's never going to replace your master's degree by any means.
Help me be more intentional about it.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Sam, did you have anything you want to add there?
No, I mean, what I'd reflect on is hearing both your experiences sort of in the field. It sounds like many, it's so familiar. I think even those of us that have worked in the field for a long time can relate to every single thing that you said. So it's obviously, I think it's one of the issues, challenges, funny fabrics of international ed, that we have this strange way of hiring, finding jobs, promoting people, even talking to one another about opportunities.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I don't know. I just feel like every person I talk to, I don't know if you guys agree with that, but if this sounds similar to everyone that you speak with.
Yeah, I'll let you guys answer. Go ahead.
What's the question?
I'm just curious because I was not surprised at all by both of your stories,
right.
and to me it's more familiar that it is hard to get in. And I don't know anyone. I think I was lucky the first time, but since then I've had struggles. And my question is, is that familiar? Is that something you've heard from other people, or is it just this panel?
So I've, in the time that I've been in the field and been able to talk with a lot of people about, it's a great community. I mean, and people are just so willing to share their experiences and that sort of thing. And I've honestly heard a large variety of experiences. So there's one who did, she did her master's degree overseas or something like that. Came back and did a second master's in international education and was still having difficulty finding a job, ended up having to volunteer at a university for about a year before she was able even to get an interview. But then once she got that interview, she was, and then once because of all that experience, once she entered the field, she was able to move up pretty rapidly in her office. A secret to I don't know if this is a secret or not, but one of the things I've discovered is turnover is quite high in a lot of these fields. People, for one reason or another, are always on the move, looking for new opportunities and that sort of thing. And I've met people who don't even have a master's degree. Usually they're at their undergraduate institution, but they were able, maybe as an intern, doing their bachelor's degree. They were an intern in the Office for Study Abroad, and they were able to land a position right coming out of with their BA. And so I feel like there are all sorts of stories to be told. And in my particular, circumstance, looking back, knowing what I know now, I feel like with my experience before I took GPI, when I was applying for those study abroad office positions, I feel like, I had the experience that would have made me successful. But I didn't know the language, as you said, Brooke. I didn't know the language. I didn't know how to, talk about what I could bring in terms that were readily understandable. And so for one reason or another, I didn't hear anything, in that earlier job search. And once I was able to figure out what I can contribute and really build off my strengths, so once I knew more about the field, I experienced more success.
Yeah, I think for me too, I've heard this story so many times from almost everyone, except for maybe people who have been in the field for a very long time, and they said they kind of just fell into study abroad or international education. But for a lot of people in coming into the field, I think, and this is something that I think about a lot, how accessible the field is. I mean, we talk about trying to bring in diversity into education abroad, but as a field, it's, I mean, a lot of positions, masters, not required, but recommended, and that's not feasible for a lot of people. And just thinking, I've been really lucky that my parents have been very supportive of me wanting to be in this field, and I've been able to find jobs to supplement it, but that's not realistic for a lot of people. And it's kind of interesting. I've seen this story so many times with a lot of people. It's a tough field to break into. It's not just me or my immediate friends, but I've heard this story from a lot of people. It's a tough field.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, is because one of the things that we kind of just don't have as much of as other industries do is just true entry level roles, true entry level. And Sam, I know she's been working in internships for 5+ years in London, obviously for undergrads, getting internship placements in a variety of fields. But, we call jobs entry level, but you're right. It's not entry level if there's further education required or almost always preferred.
Exactly.
And that to me seems like, I know that like people often use it as a way to weed out because they know they're going to get, 100+ applications for one role. But it also, you're right. It like the accessibility and even diversity of our profession it takes a hit because of that. I absolutely agree.
I agree with that. And there's a comment someone just said about it's also difficult. So Jason's saying it's also difficult to move around once you get into the field. And I agree with that too. I think it's and I think there are a lot of people that don't move around, as well as the turnover. I know that's paradoxical, but I do think both of those things are there for sure.
Yeah.
It's tough too, because it's such a specific field. It's not like if you look at accounting or IT, there's a ton of entry level jobs, a ton of different jobs. But I mean, it's hard because you can't, offer more jobs than there are, but it is tough.
Right. Well, and also like if you think about it, a lot of traditional job titles, you can major in accounting and then become an accountant. You can't go to college and major in study abroad and then become a study abroad advisor. Like it doesn't exist. And so we're kind of making it up as we go, really, of like, what is it? What are the knowledge base you need to be successful? Because there's obviously skills, and different professional organizations have talked a lot and done lots of surveys about charting out what are the skill sets that are necessary, but the knowledge based stuff, I feel like we haven't really, because a degree in international education isn't what most people think, or it's like what that becomes is so different. X institution, international education, is all about theory and pedagogy comparisons around the world, right? It's more like comparative education. Whereas another institution might be all about administration of international education programs, which is more of what people, I think of. So it can vary broadly. I wanted to talk a little bit and like give some people some hope. And we've sprinkled in some good advice, I think, throughout this. You guys give great examples. But if you were to name like one or two things that you did specifically that helped you land your current role, that you feel like that changed the game for me, that's the thing that really switched flipped the switch for me. Joe, I'll go with Joe.
Okay, Joe. I feel like there's a couple. On the one hand, it's becoming more in tune with who I am, what skills I have, the experience that I have, and being aware of what that means for the potential employers and that sort of thing, in terms of what are they looking for and how can I fit that. So on the one hand, it's knowing more about myself. On the other hand, at some point we were talking about getting through your passion for this opportunity in your application, that sort of stuff. That's not me. I'm in a lot of ways, I'm very academic. And so my traditional cover letter had been I'm writing to apply for the position of, and that sort of thing. And I really worked on getting a cover letter that addressed the job posting, but also, and I don't know that I used the word passionate. Someone has said, I heard you're not supposed to use the word passionate. I don't know that I did, but I exuded passion in my letter. Yeah. And that's not necessarily who I am. So I also had to fake it a little bit or channel it. It must be somewhere in me. I channeled it.
Right. Well, you knew your audience, right? You were like, okay, what do they need to hear from me to be convinced that I could be a good fit for this role? Because, for me, if I'm going to apply for, some kind of very academically oriented role in international ed, it's going to be a very different story I present. It's all facts, but it's just the way I position it would be, and describe it would be very different than if I was like, hey, Sam, want to hire me? Or like, because it'd be very different experience. So I think you hit it perfectly. You explained it perfectly. Yeah. Kelsey, any tips? The one thing you think really helped you in your job search?
I think for me,
or land your current role?
There wasn't one magic thing that helped me land the position.
Oh man! But everybody wants a silver bullet. No.
I know everyone wants a silver bullet, but I think the big thing is having perspective, and that everything you do is building towards the bigger picture. And Brooke talked a lot about boomerangs in GPI, and everything that I tried to do before grad school, all the experience that I tried to get, volunteering and doing internships, or even just in networking. And I remember in GPI, we talked a lot about networking and doing informational interviews, and all of those things, going to NAFTA conferences when I could. Everything that I've done so far has kind of built on each other. And at each phase, I've been able to pull in different things that I've been working on, or maybe I heard something from a NAFTA conference and was able to use it in an interview, or
uh-oh. Is she stuck for you too, or is that me?
It's her, I think.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Kelsey, you're frozen, but hi. Well, thank you, Kelsey. I think those are great. Yeah, great points. What about you, Sam? What is like, one of your best pieces of advice for people in their job search?
I mean, my biggest piece, we've kind of said all of these things, but a focus on skills, I think, is what people appreciate, and understanding what you like and are good at and what you don't like and what you are not good at. That for me that was always the game changer for me. And so that's my biggest piece of advice. And I know we have a question sort of in the question area about sort of what are some pivot careers you can think of related to international ed at this time. And I'm sure some of you will have good advice there too. But for my thing, it's all about skills, right? So we've said it, there is no magic bullet, but I think the focus on skills and what, again, what you can bring, what you're good at, what you like, that was sort of the game-changing thing for me. And we haven't said this, but I do think it happens, and it's natural in any job hunt. You can be desperate. I have definitely been a desperate job hunter, and it does come across, right? And so sometimes you just have to, I don't know if you guys have had that experience, but you have to kind of have that for yourself, but then in the job hunt, take a deep breath and not have that sort of ode to desperation that can come across. Because it clouds you, it clouds how people see you, but it also clouds your view of what you can bring, right? Those are my kind of little nuggets.
Yeah. And I think I love the skills that, I'm all about valuable skill sets and getting actual skills that people need to deliver on their product that they're trying to push. Right. I wanted to address these questions like head on so that people watching the recording can zoom to them. So Lisa asked, what are some pivot careers you think what are some pivot careers you can think of related to IE at this time? Marty added a few ideas here as well. We'll chime in. I think, you need to go back to like the core of what we do in international education. And obviously travel is a piece of that, but it's all about, crossing figurative and literal borders, right? So how do you think about things like intercultural communication, facilitation? All sorts of organizations need that. And it's not always, based on like nationality and those types of crossing cultures, or even language differences, even sometimes. Like think about the concept of code switching and how do, I don't know. There's lots of different things. I always think of like the urban to rural divide. Like how do you get those two communities speaking the same language and communicating in ways that understand? Like, so think about intercultural communication and how all sorts of organizations need that in some capacity. And frankly, I think in this environment, the people who are going to find the most success, whether in international education or they pivot to another industry, are the people who have the most creative innovation mindsets about the type of work that they can do. You can't, if you're thinking like, okay, it has to be like going to an office, and processing applications and teaching pre-departures, like it has to have those things and that's what I know how to do, then you're probably going to be frustrated because not all industries and organizations have that same kind of flow. So you need to start thinking of what is the parallel to those things? What other ways could you apply those types of skills that you've amassed in your career in international ed? I think Sam and I were talking about this. I was also talking about just general, right now we're in, I don't have to tell you guys all, but, a global pandemic, there's a lot of humanitarian needs and they may not be technically international in nature, although there are a lot of them. But think about in your own local communities about any kind of skill you've gained from bringing together different constituencies on a common topic. So if you've been, spearheading, getting all the department heads at your university talking and facilitating something around international ed, that is a great skill set that now it's like, okay, is there something that an organization that needs help, like figuring out all of the food drive things happening in your city or
Right.
your town or whatever. Those are all sorts of great skills that you can apply to a lot of different settings. I think you just have to be really creative about what you're doing. Any other ideas for you guys about in terms of pivots? I have a few others, but I don't want to too much.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, right now, one of the things that's, and we'll see what happens of it, but there's a whole lot of virtual or remote opportunities kind of popping up. And so if you have any of those types of skills of facilitating, as Brooke is doing, these communications across oceans and that sort of thing, but facilitating, educational opportunities or informational or whatever, facilitating work that involves people from disparate places kind of coming together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a skill that is going to be increasingly in demand because of lingering effects of this pandemic, because of environmental concerns. The world of international education was changing already, and I think that this is really kind of accelerating that change and maybe in some ways drastically altering the course of those changes. But and that in and of itself kind of reiterates what Brooke is saying about the need to think creatively, think entrepreneurially, think about ways that you can kind of read the landscape and hop onto the train at a place that's a lot of mixed metaphors there, but kind of wave at just the right moment by kind of studying the field. I think one of the things that I did as a result of this course was I really started to study international education, and I've had to do so since. And I think now, if people aren't already, they need to subscribe to SECUSL, because there are all sorts of interesting conversations, but also all sorts of interesting webinars and opportunities to learn about these new opportunities and what's study abroad going to look like and that sort of thing, that will help you position yourself for down the road, however long that might be.
Yeah. I always tell people my best advice, when I say the first mistake is talking about your passion for study abroad, and that's all you got, in terms of trying to get a job in the field. Because I'm passionate about study abroad too, but I got to bring some oomph behind that passion. The way you do that is, I always say, you got to geek out. You got to geek out on international ed. If you don't know, if you're like, I studied abroad, and I'm like, well, what company, was the facilitator? And I'm like, I don't know. It's like London. I don't know, something. Like, okay, we better start there, just figuring out how does a program actually happen? What are all the pieces? So, Sam, any thoughts, ideas, pivot ideas?
Yeah, I have lots of ideas in this area, mainly because I just think, again, if you go back to skills, then really there's so much transferable skills that transcend industry. I've seen people sort of inexperienced, and then ideas I have. I've seen people go into HR, learning and development, right? So we do, in general, as a field, have excellent communication skills, and those can go into lots of different areas. I've seen people that get really excited about tech in our field. And so they might think about something like, well, how does tech improve what we do? So maybe Salesforce or the CRM management systems that we all use, or the course management systems that we use, and how, the people that run those companies, they want to know how universities work. There are jobs that are going for university reps. Speaking of that, if you have an interest or you're working in university relations and partnerships, I'm going to say it's a dirty word, but what you're doing is business development and kind of sales. And that is super transferable to other organizations. And it doesn't mean that these organizations, you can't believe in their purpose. I think that's really important to say. I think I wouldn't get so, I think there's a lot of positive ways that we can pivot. And that would then also, I would hope, welcome you back in if that's something that you want to do again.
And
I'd
I think
be really
creating,
curious what other people think.
Yeah, meaningful learning experiences in any kind of existing community. So, whether, a company now is like a mostly remote company now, and they need to figure out ways like, how do you bring people together? How do you create a culture within the organization? Common language and designing program, and I call them interventions, but like any kind of intervention to like build out that community and create those common experiences for people in an organization, I think are really valuable. We've also talked about nonprofit organizations, especially the ones who really rely on in-person fundraising events and those types of things. If you have skills to how to, crowdfund basically in a digital space, and really have the communication skills, have the persuasion skills, have the storytelling skills to help motivate people to want to support a cause they believe in, that is really powerful. And if you're passionate about international ed, I'm sure you're passionate about a lot of other issues that could be really valuable to humanity. So if you can bring those types of skill sets to any other kind of field where they need support with fundraising and just and funding opportunities. Also, just think about, grant writing. I had to do a lot of grant writing when I was at the University of South Dakota. All sorts of organizations do that, and they can be done remote. So if you have those skills, I would also say, don't wait for the job, the perfect job, and to be dropped on Indeed or LinkedIn Jobs or wherever. Like, go create your job. If you're like, oh, wow, I've been writing grant proposals for the last 3 years in my job, go find a nonprofit you like and just say, hey, I will contract with you and I will apply for all the grants and work with them to make that happen. So again, you got to get creative, and you got to know the skills. Like Joe said, you got to know what you bring to the table. But from there, then it's up to you to go and pitch yourself, be the creator of your own destiny. That sounded very cheesy, but there was another question I wanted to get to. So Brooke asked, hello, Brooke, what a lovely name you have. If you crack into the field without a master's, when should you circle back to the master's? Do you have to? Is the opportunity cost worth it? This is an excellent question, Brooke. I love this, because I will tell you right now that Miss Sam Cooper and our friend Samantha LaCroix, we call her Bazzer, but also formerly of USA, we all come from the same place, but they both, as an example, they both worked in the field for many years, had great careers, and then circled back to the master's, and then went forward from there. So Sam, I'm going to let you field this one.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think you're going to get a lot of different opinions on this subject, and that is not a bad thing. I am myself am torn. And I'm just going to be really upfront with that. I went back, I had a 12-year break between my bachelor's and my master's, and I'd been working in the field really that whole time as well. And in the end, I decided to get a master's because I was interested in intellectually going back to school and learning something different. And I chose a master's in public administration, and I loved it. I had a lot of people tell me, that's great, it's going to open up career opportunities for you. I'm going to be honest, it has not. I think the jobs I've gotten since my master's, I probably would have gotten anyway, if I'm being honest. I also had people say, that doesn't mean it's still not going to help. I'm still glad I have it. It taught me a lot, again, about being a student and doing the critical thinking and putting the work in behind the scholarship, behind improving yourself, which I think is really important. Again, a transferable skill. I had a lot of people that said, I can't believe you're getting a master's. You don't need it. You'll get hired. This isn't something that you need. And that feel very adamant about it, and probably would to this day. I won't name them, but and I often think about that person and think, wow, I have student debt. I will never pay it off. That's okay. And so that is my and that's my one very particular thing. I wish I had it been doing it while I was working at a university. That would probably have been the smarter way to do it. And I wish our field was more upfront about that if they want you to have a master's, then that's something that they will help you do in an entry-level role to or whatever, to help you do that. And I think some people are, and actually I think there are some people that are quite open and supportive of that. So that's why you can probably see I've answered it and not answered it. I think it really depends. For me, if you're going to do it, you should really want to do it. It's a lot of money and investment in time, and you should want to be a scholar. You should want to learn and expand your brain and
Preach.
struggle through writing and have that process of research, which is horrific and wonderful, and produce and learn and grow. But you should want to do it for that, I think. I don't know what you guys think. I know
Yeah, I'm preaching. You just like said everything I would say. The thing I always tell people, I said, the moment you're like, should I get a master's degree? I said, go to your local library, go check out 9 books, big books on that subject matter, and look at them and go, do I want to sit down and read all of these books? And because you're going to read more than that. And it's like, so I always tell people, like, go get 9 books on international education, or go get 9 books on higher education, or, public administration, or, business, even if you want to get an MBA, whatever the subject matter is, like, go see what you're going to be putting your mind on for the next 2 years ish, and decide is that really something you want to invest that time in. Obviously money. I mean, I don't want to belabor that point too much, but I always tell people, like, you got to love it. I think you got to love it. Otherwise it's going to be very obvious that you phoned it in, that you were like, I'm just ticking off a box. And I feel like when people are just trying to tick off a box, like, even if you think the master's degree is your golden ticket to the best career in international ed, I will tell you, with over 500 people who have gone through GPI, I've had a lot of people with master's degrees and with PhDs who still, they still struggled to land that next role or pivot to that next role. And it wasn't because, they had there was anything wrong with them. And their master's degree or their further education did not like guarantee them like an interview even. Again, it all comes back to, you have to have the right knowledge, skills, and experience that's appropriate for the job you want. And you have to know how to position that in a way that's valuable to the reader, the person who's like, oh, interview pile, boom, they are a dream come true. I absolutely have to talk to them. And most people don't think about that. So I would say, I agree with Sam. If you're already in the field, if you're like, there's a specific type of role that you're like dead set, you want to be in, and you've been trying to get it and you're hitting a bunch of walls, I would say even then I would still be, I would give myself a time frame of like flex my network. I'd be doing all the extra stuff where it's like, if you need to, in your current role, get more experience managing people or what, I don't know, depending on what you need, like I would figure out, okay, how can I start stacking my resume with the right skills and experiences, and really working my network and telling everyone who I know loves and cares and wants me to be successful, tell them this is the job I want, the type of role I want, help, any advice, any help, any leads you can give me. And then after you've done that for 5 years, no, I'm just kidding. but like even then I would be like, oh, honey, call me, like we'll figure it out, because I just don't think the master's is the golden ticket unless you really love it and you really want to study that. Then go for it. I say go for it. But I'm also a huge advocate of like, get grad school paid for. I have a lot of student debt. I will tell you, it's all from undergrad, because I was one of those people that ended up getting into the kind of program where you do a grad assistantship, it's paid for, blah, blah, blah. So I always tell people like, don't pay for grad school, but that's just me. We are over time. Any final thoughts from my esteemed panel here?
No. I agree with everything y'all said about the graduate school. I guess the one question I would have, did it help? Did you get paid more at least because you had a master's degree or not? Is what I would ask Sam, if it helps in the money category. But
no.
No, it didn't. In fact, I had a master's degree when I applied to work with Sam, and I will tell you, no, I didn't.
Yeah. So I think thanks so much. Thank you, Brooke, for allowing me to kind of share my knowledge with you and your audience. I enjoyed this tremendously.
Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule. Thank you for saying so many nice things about GPI. I did not tell you to do that, so I really appreciate you doing that. And Sam, thank you for being here
Thanks,
as
guys.
always.
Yeah.
Staying up late for us in London. Kelsey, I'm sorry we had internet issues, but you were wonderful. Thank you for being here. And Sabrina, I'm sorry we couldn't get you on the call either, but you guys, I'm going to be putting these on the podcast feed as well. So if you haven't had a chance, go, I don't know where to send you, but anyway, there is a podcast. Go to your favorite podcast player, search for Inside Study Abroad. We're there. Subscribe, leave a review. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave a review on iTunes. It really helps the podcast get found by more people. And also, if anybody is interested in maybe joining GPI, if you're thinking, oh, I'm interested in this, there's a link down below. It says join the Global Pro Institute waitlist. Just put your email in there and we'll be opening the doors for our returned program, but our next cohort was summer 2020. We're going to be opening the doors next week just to that wait list group. And we'll also have a discount for those people as well. So if you are curious, want to learn more about it, head to insidestudyabroad.com/GPI and learn all about it. Thank you all for being here. You're wonderful. And we will see you all hopefully next week. I'll be emailing you about it for sure. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.